Hello folks, this is Pastor Paul, and you're watching another episode of Divine Moments right here on Midwest Whitetail. The teaching for today is Remembering Your Past Victories. Well folks, today I'm going to be using a couple of different illustrations to help us understand the biblical topic at hand, remembering your past victories. If you'll remember, back in February, March, and April of this past year, Bill aired 3 episodes right here on Midwest Whitetail that had to deal with the topic of shed hunting. I want to tell you, our pro staffers went out and they did a really good job of collecting all these sheds. They really piled them up over a period of several days. Now, as we think about the topic of shed hunting, we might ask the question, what value is there going out into the woods and looking for these sheds that the bucks drop? Well, I can think of several. First of all, we have an opportunity to see what deer actually made it through the season that might have been on our hit list that we would have an opportunity to hunt again. Next, we have an opportunity to actually maybe find some sheds off a buck that we did not even know were on our property. So then that might be a deer that we want to add to our hit list the next fall. And finally, it's just a great way to go back into the past and relive some great victories of maybe encounters you've had with these bucks. And it just gives you a great way to help set up in the fall and to prepare for the upcoming season. Well folks, let me set another scenario up for you. Let's say you're on your favorite tree stand or ground blind location. It is a spot that you've worked really hard for, the wind is just right, you've done all your homework, and you thought today would be the day. And you slipped into that location, and the next thing you know, it is a slow day, you've barely seen any deer throughout the day, and now you're becoming discouraged, and you're beginning to wonder, should I come off stand, come out of the ground blind, go on home, try a different spot? And you're just really discouraged. Well, let me tell you, these are the times when you need to go back and relive your past victories. These are the times you need to remind yourself how quickly things can change in the woods. 1 minute you're seeing nothing, 30 seconds later you have a deer on the ground because the nice trophy buck has stepped right into your shooting lane. By going back and reliving our past victories, it'll keep our minds sharp and ready to go when that shooter buck steps out. Well folks, it's just like that in our Christian walk as well. We need to go back and relive our past victories to remind us that God is faithful. And today, I'm going to use the account of David and Goliath to help illustrate that point. I want you to picture the scene for just a moment. It's an epic battlefield. You have a valley with 2 mountains surrounding this valley. On one mountain you have a Philistine army. On the other mountain you have the Israelite army. And we have these 2 armies that are about ready to go into battle. The tension in the air is so thick that you can cut it with a knife. There's a giant of a man by the name of Goliath who is on the Philistine army, and he comes out every day and he begins to challenge the Israelite army and taunt them. And he's basically challenging one person to step out. Now folks, this battle didn't play out the way we see in the movies sometimes with large numbers of men going into battle. We see a young boy who shows up on the scene. His name is David. He has several brothers that are already there. They're on the front lines. But David shows up and he begins to inquire and listen to what Goliath is saying. And this is what he says in 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 32. He tells King Saul, "Don't let your men's heart be faint because of this Philistine giant coming out and taunting you." He said, "Your servant is willing to go and fight this man." Now I want to tell you, you might be thinking the same thing I would. Hey, you're just a little boy. And this mighty man Goliath, he has been a mighty warrior since he was a little boy. He's a man of valor, a big tough soldier. You're just a little boy. David begins to recount his victories in the Lord. He begins to tell King Saul about a time when he was out taking care of his father's sheep. David was a shepherd. And as he was tending to his father's sheep, there was a lion and there was also a bear that came to steal away the sheep out of the flock. But let me tell you, David took off after that lion and the bear, and he slew both of them. And this is what he said to Saul. He said, "God delivered me out of the hands of the lion and of the bear. And this Philistine giant, he'll be no different." And so we simply see David going back, recounting his past victories to remind himself that his God is faithful. Well folks, after David recounted his victories to King Saul about the lion and the bear, David picked up his sling, 5 smooth stones, and with one twirl of that sling and one smooth stone to the forehead, the mighty Goliath went down. And now David had another victory to tuck in his back pocket to remind him of God's faithfulness for another day. Well, folks, I want to just take a moment to relive a past victory in my life. Let me introduce you to my oldest daughter, Anna. Now, let me tell you, Anna is a vibrant little girl. She loves to run, play, ride her bike, chase and torment her siblings. She's involved with tap, dance, ballet, and she is just a vibrant little girl. Well, when Anna was just around the age of 2, Anna began to have seizures. The first seizure that she had was right in our home in the kitchen, and it was a very scary event for my wife and I. Anna basically lost consciousness, quit breathing, and began to turn blue. And let me tell you, as a parent, that's one of the scariest things you can go through as you see your child going through a situation like that. The worst seizure she actually had was at our church. It was on a Wednesday night. And after the church service was over, I was in a classroom counseling with a couple teens, and I heard something hit the floor just outside the door. And then I heard my wife say, "Anna, Anna." I knew what had happened. I opened the door, and there was my daughter Anna lying on the floor. It was a scary event. It was the worst one we had seen yet. And I could hear my wife in the background just saying, "Jesus, Jesus, please help Paul. Please help Anna." And I began to pick Anna up, talk to her like the doctors had told us to do. And let me tell you, it was a really scary event. But let me share with you how my God is faithful. That very next weekend after that seizure happened with Anna, I was scheduled to go into a local jail and do a prison ministry through the weekend. I was leading the clergy team with an organization called Residents Encounter Christ. So we met on a Friday night preparing to go into the jail for the weekend. And as I sat with the team talking with them, I told them I know that God wanted me to be here and to serve these men that were in the jail. But my thoughts were a million miles away with my daughter. And I shared with them everything that she had been going through. Well, at that moment, a good friend of mine stepped up, and I didn't even know his past situation, but he told me that one of his children also had seizures, and that God had healed his boy. He said, "Paul, I think God could heal Anna as well." And I looked at this man and I said, "You know, I believe that too." So myself and a bunch of burly old guys just got down at an altar of prayer in a small little country church out in the middle of nowhere, didn't have anybody to impress. We simply knelt down and began to pray. Now, I don't know how long we were in prayer. It seemed just like a few moments, but the clock said a whole lot different. But I want to tell you, there was a certain point in that prayer that I knew that God had touched my daughter Anna. And as I stood up, I told these men, "My daughter's been healed." Now, since that day, Anna has never had another seizure. And I just want to give God all the praise for that. And I want to tell you this, I have to relive that victory often, because there's times that I begin to doubt. There are times that I worry. There's times that I have fear. But there are times when I go back and I simply relive that past victory to remind me that our God is faithful. As I think about the topic of giants, I realize that giants come in many different shapes and forms. I don't know what your giants are, but I know what mine are. Many times giants come in the form of fear, depression, anxiety, loneliness. Other times they can come in the form of addictions, alcohol or drug abuse, sexual temptations. And so we find that each one of us has giants in our life, things that without God's help we will not be able to conquer. So I just want to remind you to go back and relive past victories, places where you know God has helped you, times where you know that He has delivered you. And I want you to go back and relive those past victories. And when the giants of life begin to face you and you begin to have fear and doubt, simply go back and remember that our God, He is a faithful God. Call on His name. Jeremiah 33:3 says this, "Call on the name of the Lord, and He will answer you, and He will show you great and mighty things that you know not." I want to tell you, friend, as you do that, you'll begin to have victory in your life. Well, friend, that's all the time we have for today. I've hoped you enjoyed this episode of Divine Moments right here on Midwest Whitetail. And as always, I want to tell you, if you have any questions or comments in reference to the content you heard today, feel free to email me at paul@midwestwhitetail.com. And on behalf of myself and Bill Winkie, we simply want to remind you to enjoy each and every divine moment provided to you by our wonderful Creator, Almighty God. Thanks, God bless, and relive your victories every day.